Don't expect me to sing "Someday My Prince Will Come." Hello, welcome to my channel. Another Bibliophile Reads. My name is Greg, and today I'm doing an unusual tag. Unusual for me. The Cinderella tag. This tag was created by Heather at Heather Reads and Meg at Books Off the Beaten Path. I was tagged by Pat at Book Chat with Pat. This tag only has 6 prompts. How nice to have a small amount of prompts. Prompt number 1, the Pumpkin Coach. Is there a bookish event or bookish location that you've not been able to get to at all or as much as you'd like to? Yes, there is. There are a number of them. But when I was living outside of Seattle, I loved to take trips to Portland, Oregon, and visit Powell's Books. Powell's Books is probably the largest bookstore in the United States. It might be even one of the largest bookstores in the world. They have a whole city block filled with new and used books. I've been there half dozen times, maybe a little bit more, and I have not explored the entire store because there is just too much store to explore. So many fascinating shelves, so many rabbit holes or warrens that you can get to and just discover books. The good thing is that I will be visiting Portland, Oregon in March of 2026, so I will once again get to visit Powell's Books. I am really excited. I am going to be visiting with my buddy Alan at Big Heart Books and Classics, who lives in Portland, Oregon, and can see this bookstore basically anytime he wants to, or just about. Prompt number 2, the mice turn to horses. Name up to 3 books that are small fry in the book world but mean a lot to you. Or name an author who does not get the publicity they deserve and transform their reputation on Booktube. The Maniac by Benjamin Labatut, published in 2023. This is the first book that Labatut published originally in English. He says that he prefers writing in English over Spanish. The Maniac is a hybrid work, part novel, part historical reconstruction. It's centered primarily on the Jewish-Hungarian mathematician Jan von Neumann, one of the towering intellects of the 20th century. He was a mathematical genius. He is mostly known for his theory of von Neumann machines. In his theory, a von Neumann machine is a machine that can build another machine like itself and improve upon itself. So this is sort of important as we're going into the AI world. And this novel is basically told in 3 novellas. There is some connection between these novellas. The first one is about a philosopher who kills his mentally disabled son and then takes his own life. The second part of The Maniac does focus on Jan von Neumann, and it is very dense. There are some sections of this book that are explaining his mathematical theories, and as a non-mathematician, I have to admit, I was a little bit lost, but not lost enough to put down the book. Lost enough to be curious about what he's writing about, but not having to delve deeper and try to truly understand the mathematics behind Jan von Neumann. And Jan von Neumann had a strange life. He had some odd relationships. Let's just leave it at that. And the third part of this novel, known as the AlphaGo section, it starts off describing how there were once chess computers and how no one believed that a chess computer could defeat a chess master. Well, chess computers eventually did defeat chess masters, but then they came up with the game of Go. This is a game primarily out of Japan, where you have red and black stones. It is a game sort of like chess with moves, but they said that the idea behind Go was so complicated, much more complicated than chess, that no computer could learn to play Go. Well, there was a AlphaGo tournament where they brought in a computer that could play Go. Guess what it did to the Go master? This is a very important thing to learn, especially with the rise of AI nowadays. What can AI learn? Because in the past, this book shows that we believe computers could not defeat a chess master, that a computer could not defeat a Go master. Both of those things have happened. So this is a very interesting book. In many ways, this book is more nonfiction than fiction, but I still can highly recommend it. Number 2, A Worse Place Than Hell: How the Civil War Battle of Fredericksburg Changed a Nation by John Matson, 2021. This book centers on the Battle of Fredericksburg, December 1862, one of the most devastating Union defeats of the American Civil War. But Matson does something more ambitious than a battlefield reconstruction. He tells a story. He brings the reader into Fredericksburg and the Battle of Fredericksburg. He does this by telling the stories of 5 people. Some of these people you will immediately recognize, or should immediately recognize. Some will be new to you. There is the story of Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr., who became a Supreme Court justice. There is Arthur Fuller, a one-eyed chaplain. I had never heard of Arthur Fuller before this book. There is Walt Whitman, one of America's most famous and profound poets. Louise May Alcott. She is the author of a very well-known book, Little Women. She was also a nurse in the hospitals after the Battle of Fredericksburg, and she was a devoted nurse, too. Then there is John Pelham. He is the sole representation of the South in this book, out of the 5 characters, and he was a magnificent ingenious in artillery. Do you think artillery is important to the Civil War? Yes, it was, and he was a very good artilleryman. Matson frames Fredericksburg as a turning point in the American Civil War, when optimism about a short war collapsed into the grim recognition of a prolonged bloodshed on American soil. This is a narrative in the tradition of deeply character-driven nonfiction. If you appreciate books that examine how ideas and personalities collide with catastrophe, this book will appeal to you. I really enjoyed it. Number 3, 9 Nasty Words, English in the Gutter, Then, Now, and Forever by John McWhorter, 2021. This is a lively and cultural linguistic history of English profanity. McWhorter focuses primarily on the 9 core Anglo-Saxon swear words, including their familiar 4-letter ones, tracing their origins, how they became taboo, how their offensiveness shifted over time, and what their trajectories reveal about culture. McWhorter argues that swear words are not linguistically bad. They're socially marked. Taboo switches with cultural anxiety. The rise of certain profanities reflect changing moral priorities. Medieval English was more scandalized by blasphemy, God's wounds, than by sexual words. The Victorian period heightened sexual taboos. The 20th century saw bodily functions word gain shock. In the 20th and 21st century, racial slurs became the most heavily policed moral category of swear words. I have to admit, I love to swear. I don't swear a lot on my YouTube channel, but at home, I cuss it up like a sailor. This book is entirely fascinating. A look at language and culture, and it may give you some ideas of some nasty words to use yourself. Prompt number 3, The Glass Slipper. Name a book you loved, but you either gave away, lost, left behind, and now you feel you need to replace. Let me mention Death Tour by David J. Michael, originally published in 1978. This book is really just a stand-in for a whole slew of other paperback books. I used to have a much larger collection of old, pulpy paperbacks of horror, and I got rid of them over time because I thought I could replace them. I originally read Death Tour back in the late 70s, early 80s. It was a little horror book that I picked up at a drugstore counter. You know, those old spinning racks they used to sell paperback books in. And I read it in a day. It is essentially about alligators in New York City. Ultimately, it probably isn't a very good book, but I enjoyed it back then when I was young. And then when I was in my early 40s, I found a paperback copy of it for $1.05. And I said, sure, I'll buy this book for $1.05. And then I took it home. It sat on my shelves for a number of years. I did not pick it up and reread it. And then there came an incident when I was considering moving homes and downsizing my library. So I went to the shelf and I said, oh, this book is only $1.05. If I really want to replace it, I only have to spend $1.05 to replace it. So I turned it into a used bookstore for probably like 4 or 5 cents. Years later, I looked at it at the internet. This book is now relatively expensive. You can buy it for maybe $27.97 from a very questionable seller, and most copies are around $58. Now, in the grand scheme of things, yes, I can afford a $58 payment for a book. But do I really want to spend that amount of money on, well, it's going to be a very disappointing book? Most likely. Why this book is here is I have nostalgia. I have nostalgia for the days when used paperbacks could be bought dirt cheap, and there were plenty in used bookstores. I miss those days. That's why this book is at this tag. I want to replace all those old paperbacks, but I really don't want to pay the new prices. Prompt number 4, The Ball Gown. Name a book you have not read, but what you've heard about makes you think it will fit you perfectly. Since I was tagged by Book Chat with Pat, and she cheated and named 3 books, I sort of feel that I can cheat too and name 3 books. The first one I want to talk about is Being and Time by Martin Heidegger, one of the seminal works of 20th century philosophy, also known as a notoriously difficult book. Heidegger wants to ask, what is being? Western philosophy, since Plato, has forgotten what it means to be. We talk about beings, objects, people, God, ideas, but we don't ask about being itself, what it means. This is not theology, it's not conventional metaphysics, it's an attempt to analyze the structure of existence from the inside. As I said, this book is notoriously difficult. Dense vocabulary, invented terminology, long recursive sentences, constant conceptual layering. This book will be a hell of a hard read. I did mention this in a previous video, and a commenter said, I'd read that book with you. So there's at least one other person on Booktube who might be interested in Being in Time, but the problem is I would have to read a number of other contextual books to help explain what I'm reading. So this, although I want to do it, I'm scared of this book. Miss Mackintosh, My Darling by Marguerite Young. This is one of the longest novels in American literature. It is also one of its least conventional. The narrator, Vera, recounts her lifelong search for the enigmatic Miss Mackintosh, a governess-like figure from her youth. But plot is not part of this book. Instead, the novel unfolds. It's a vast monologue, a labyrinth of digressions, a surreal parade of characters, a meditation on illusion, identity, and authenticity. What this novel really is about is the instability of perception, the tension between surface and reality. The idea that people construct elaborate fictions about themselves. Nearly every character may be posing as something they are not. The themes include performance versus sincerity, dream logic, gender identity and disguise, the theatricalness of social life. The novel blends modernist stream of consciousness, surrealism, Baroque sentence structure, and satirical humor. Again, this is a novel that scares me. I'm frightened to read it, but maybe someday I need to. Joseph and His Brothers by Thomas Mann. This is technically a 4-volume cycle written over 16 years. The stories of Jacob from 1933, the young Joseph, 1934, Joseph in Egypt, 1936, and Joseph the Provider, 1943. This novel retells and vastly expands on the biblical story of Joseph, and that's from Genesis's books 37 to 50. But this book is not merely a biblical retelling. It is about how myth becomes history, how identity survives displacement, how storytelling creates cultural continuality. I have read his novels, The Magic Mountain, Dr. Faustus, and Death in Venice, and each time I read one of those books, I was gobsmacked at his intelligence. He has an intellect way above my own, but his stories weave philosophy and ideas in ways that utterly captivate me. I look at the depth of his knowledge and his meaning, and I truly feel a passion for intelligence and learning while reading his books, which is why eventually I do want to pick up Joseph and His Brothers. Okay, those are my 3 ball gown choices. I probably will read one of them in 2027, maybe one of them at the end of 2026. But as of recording this video, I don't know which one I will pick up. Number 5, The Fairy Godmother. Your bookish fairy godmother is prepared to make 3 books appear in front of you right now. These may be existing books or books you wish someone would write. What would you ask for? Well, I'm going to ask for books that I'd like to put on my shelves to collect. The first would be The Postman Always Rings Twice by James M. Cain, originally published in 1934. I am showing you a cover of a very magnificent old pulpy edition. I have this book in the Library of America. I think I even have the audiobook. But what I want is the pulpy paperback. This is the story of a drifter who pulls into a small California town, finds a cafe run by a Greek with a beautiful wife. He likes the beautiful wife. The beautiful wife likes the drifter. And they decide, you know what we can do? We can murder the wife's husband. Things don't turn out so well after that. This is a great crime war novel, and I really would like a pulpy paperback edition. The Man with the Golden Arm by Nelson Algren, originally published in 1949. This is the story of Frankie. Frankie is a wounded World War II vet living in Chicago. He has a wife in a wheelchair. He may have put her in that wheelchair himself. He is addicted to morphine after recovering from his wounds in the war. He is a card dealer, making a little bit of money, but he wants to be a jazz drummer, and his life slowly spirals out of control. He is involved in crime, he is involved in drug addiction, but mostly this story vividly brings to life this era of Chicago, right after World War II. You can listen to the characters speaking, and you can tell that Nelson Algren was truly listening to the people of Chicago. He captures their speech. He brings you into the dens and warrens of these people who do not live high on the hog. These are the low-end citizens of the city, and I find this novel utterly fascinating. And I would love a pulpy edition of this book, like I have next to me on the screen. Sure, I can go out to Barnes & Noble or Amazon and buy a normal paperback or an ebook. I already have the audiobook, but I want a pulpy paperback. The Sound and the Fury by William Faulkner, the folio edition. I have this book in the Library of America. I have this book on Kindle. I have this book on audio, but the folio edition is special. When Faulkner wrote this book, and he's writing the Benji section, Benji is a man who has very severe mental disabilities, and he does not think in linear time. And there are multiple storylines in the Benji section. And the way Faulkner envisioned it was that each timeline in this section would be printed in a different color of ink. The publishers rejected it as too expensive and impractical, but the Folio Society decided they were going to publish it as Faulkner intended. As I understand it, they really don't have any notes of how Faulkner intended to do this. They just have the general idea of what Faulkner wanted. But I would love to see this book in colored ink and experience the time shifts of Benji, mostly as Faulkner had intended it. Wouldn't that be great? I looked it up on eBay recently. They're running about $500 per copy. Yes, I could write a check and get it, but do I really want to spend that amount of money? Maybe someday. Prompt number 6, tag some people. I'm doing bad at Bad is Rad, Alan at Big Hard Books and Classics, Gavin at Genre Reads, Gareth's at Book Songs and Other Magic, and MJ at Reading This Life. Don't feel compelled to do this tag if you don't want to. And if you're just watching this video and you think you might want to do this tag, you don't need my permission or anyone else's permission. Just do the tag. Thank you for watching and keep on reading.